Hello everyone. So last night, well this morning for me, last night, the season finale of Elementary aired, and I watched this morning because I forgot what I was doing. I think I might have been on the computer or something, and I just forgot. I wasn't looking at the time, and so I forgot. I was like, oh shit, and so I missed the majority of what happened. So I was like, okay, if it's on demand, or I managed, if it's online tomorrow, I'm gonna watch it first thing. So it took me forever to do it because my internet's being bitchy, and so now here I am with this little video. Okay, so it was technically a 2 episode, but it was basically like the amount of time of a normal BBC Sherlock episode, about 90 minutes. It was supposedly 2 hours, but really it was only 87 minutes long. It was really good. Well, I won't say that because I'm conflicted about it, but we'll get to that in a second. So it was called, the first episode, episode 23, was called The Woman. Of course, it has to be. And then the episode 24 is called Heroine, which because it's not split up into two. It just says part. Like in the beginning when they show the credit, it says part 1 by part 2 by, so it's just combined into one episode. And so that's crazy, guys. A lot of things happen in this 2-parted episode, honestly. A lot of things that I don't know how I feel about them. The ending was my favorite part, but we'll get to that because it was just so perfect, guys. So remember the last episode, we ended with him finding Irene. And so in this episode, after they showed the clips of what has happened thus far with Irene Adler, we're there in the little moment after he, starts getting choked up because he knows it's her. So she turns around, right? And he calls her, he goes, Irene! He does it again because she looks at him confused, right? Because she hasn't seen him in pretty much 2 years. But there's a huge problem, guys. There's this really huge problem. She's been messed with emotionally by, well, at this point in time, it seems like Moriarty has messed her up pretty bad. Like, she's shouting about this guy named Mr. Stapleton, I think that's what she called him. And so she had a fit. She scratched Sherlock's face. Like, he came up to her and he was just like, oh, Irene, and he holds her, and she reaches up and scratches him in the face, and she ends up going to the hospital because she's having a mental breakdown, basically, because she doesn't know what's going on. Well, it seems this way. She doesn't know what's going on because she hasn't seen him, and he had thought she was dead, remember? And we find out why he thinks that during the episode, because there's a lot of flashbacks. There's a couple flashbacks with him and Irene. One of the first scenes, after we see him, he's viewing her outside of the hospital room she's in because she's talking to Gregson. Because Gregson asking her all these questions about Sherlock and what happened in that house she was in, because it's like a closed off house. So, and then she tells him about Stapleton, Mr. Stapleton, who apparently brings her these. He's the only one she has contact with, and he always brings her these white flowers, and I cannot remember exactly what the name of the flower is, but and then one of the first flashbacks Sherlock has is of his initial meeting with Irene, and we were told in the last episode, when he finally told Watson about Irene and what she's a restorator of old paintings, but he deduced her. You know how in the BBC Sherlock version, he can't even do that. She's puzzling to him. and in this one, she still is kind of puzzling to him, but at the same time, she's um he was able to figure out a piece of her at least. So she was painting when he came into her home in London, um, over those 2 years ago. It's like a little bit plus 2 years. And he's there to consult because of a client of his, something about a restoration project or something. And what happens is that he's trying to figure out if a certain painting is real. Because there's people who forge them, and there's people who restore them, or it's just the original. I've read a lot of books about that stuff because that's kind of interesting to me. Um, so he pointed out that not only was she a restorator of old painting, she was a thief. She stole things, because he pointed out there was this one particular painting. Gosh, I wish I could remember what it was called. That he found that was on the wall, and he realized it was not a restoration, but it was the original piece. I think it might have been an Italian piece. But I'm not for sure. And he's sitting there and he's looking at her. I mean, he's looking at the painting. He looks like he's not really paying attention to anything, because he just seems like he's trailing it. She hadn't talked to him in a while. She's turned back to her painting, and she's painting again. And he's like, "I'm sorry for lingering." He has like, if you can tell that there's something else on his mind, but then he reveals it, that he starts to tell her how he knows that some of these paintings are not restorations, they're originals on the wall. And so he makes a game on it. He's like, if I am correct in deducing all of the paintings in here that are not restorations, allow me to take you out on a town of this fine, a night on the town of this fine city. They're in London, not New York. And so she's like, I told you you have a beautiful face. 'Cause when he first came in and she looked at him, she's like, you have nice symmetry. I'm very good at looking for those things. And God, it made me look at his face, like John Lee Miller's face, because he does have nice symmetry. And she's like, you say that I'm beautiful. You said that I was beautiful, and I mean, I said that you were beautiful, and the way you're looking at me makes it seem like basically that they don't have to leave the apartment to enjoy each other's company, basically sex. And so then he just like extends his arm to her, and he's like, shall we? And so I guess they don't really show it, but I'm guessing he does his little game of deducing which paintings are forgeries and which ones are originals, and or restorations. And then it comes back, and he finally gets Sherlock's in this place, pre-knowing about Irene's not so it's her fake death, basically. He knows that he kind of, he was very dark and hell-bent on finding out who killed her and killing them. At the time, he assumed it was Moriarty, and that's the same thing here. He's a little, I want to say he's still kind of lost, honestly, because he seems as if he's torn between protecting her and finding out what has happened to her during those years. And he ends up taking her back to the brownstone where him and Watson leave, and Watson has this moment where it broke my heart, because she goes, I can find another place. She basically was about to give up living with him because Irene's back. She's like, you don't really need me now that you've solved the puzzle of Irene, or someone, you have her back in your life. And he's like, no, Watson, this is your home. And I was like, oh God, don't make me cry. And so, but what we find out is
most of this is a huge illusion that Sherlock had no idea about. He was so focused on him and Irene, whatever this thing they had going on was. And we find another flashlight back. This is after they had sex, and they're sitting, and he has this picture, and if you watch Elementary since the whole season started, then you remember one of the murders was, when the guy would have these people up on this thing, and he like basically cut them, and I think it's in their artery, and all the blood would come out, just spill out of them. It was that contraption. He was like drawing on it, and he's like, I've never had anything so stimulating that makes my mind go, because he's like drawing all over it. She's like, do you really have to do this right after? He was like, I've never had something produce so much stimulant in me before. Him and her having sex, basically. And I was just like, oh, you're making me hate you right now. You're really making me hate you. And so during and then we find out, because Irene when she has these attacks where she seemingly seems like she's experiencing something either in a dream state or awake that frightens her. And the first one was she was frightened because apparently she was asleep, and she woke up. She was screaming about Mr. Stapleton changing the rules. And the rules, we don't know what the rules are, honestly, but apparently he changed something. He changed the rules or whatever. And so Sherlock's, he ran in there to make sure she was okay. And once he saw that he was gonna leave the room, because I don't think he didn't know what to do about her, since everything's kind of changed for him. He's sober now, and he doesn't touch things, and well, we know that she was his downward spiral, basically, into addiction and all those things. And she's like, come sit down, Sherlock. Tell me what's been going on with you for the next 2 years. He's like, is there anything I can do for you? And then he just leaves, because I guess he decides that he doesn't want her to know of how hurt and he was by her death, or her supposed death. But there comes another moment when I don't know if she had a panic attack or something, or they were sitting. No, it was I guess they were in the sitting room, where the TV is, and she's flicking through the channels, and he's standing by the door, and he's just looking at her, and he's like, is there anything you need from me? And she's like, no, I'm fine. And then she kind of turns, and she's like, and she just kind of stares at him, and he's like, and then he sits down kind of close to her, and he's like, after your death, or he's like, I know that because I know that I dabbled with drugs on occasion, but it was never anything lethal, but after your death, basically, that he used to use them to numb the pain, basically. And he's like, and then they didn't help anymore, so I just kept going with it, and to the point where where Scotland Yard basically benched him, and then his dad made him go to rehab, and then he ended up in New York. And so that was something, and and he's like, I'm sorry, this is all my fault, basically, that she was harmed or whatever, because he feels that it's Moriarty's doing, and he isn't too far off about that, because we do find out who Moriarty is. And this is where the confliction comes in. I'm not gonna say it yet, but I will shortly. Moriarty, this was just, I don't know, I feel conflicted about See, I can't even talk about what I was gonna talk about. Basically, she told him that he's like, that probably doesn't help you much, but she's like, it does. It gives me hope. For like, he's like, if the great Sherlock Holmes has turned his life around, maybe there's some hope for me, basically. But guys, I'm sorry, but I have to do this. I have to say it now, or I'm already pissed. I'm still pissed to an extent. Moriarty. So Sherlock Sherlock was investigating all the things that happened with Moriarty because something happened. So well, there's this assassin who they were investigating for there was another case. It dealt with Irene because there was a flower left in her room by Mr. Stapleton, because that's what Mr. Stapleton used to do. And I can't think what the name of the flower. It's a white flower. It's very beautiful. It's like a simple white petal flower. It like opens up. And he had left it in. They found the footage of the man on there, and so they went to go track down the guy. But it ended up not being the guy they thought it was. It was the brother, and the brother ended up having to shave off his hair because it was very long, and he wore glasses, and he changed. And he was supposedly working for Moriarty. We found out because he got the call and he tried to contact with Moriarty, and then Moriarty had finally got him settled in. Not settled. Well, he got him a car, and like they met in this. I think it's more of a storage unit. And so Moriarty was like, he basically told him, here's some cash, here's a gun, there's a phone, and once you get to so-and-so place, you get more instructions. But don't lose that phone, because it's where you're basically attached. And the guy basically shot up the guys who were there. He's like, I'm only leaving. He left one alive. He's like, I'm leaving you alive so you can report back to Moriarty. And he basically made his mission to kill Sherlock. But, no. Moriarty is a step ahead of the game. Of course, we know Moriarty is always a little step higher than, you always have to. And so this is when the revelation of who Moriarty is comes to play. And I don't know, I don't think I was shocked by it really, because we've been over this several times, that me and Irene Eiler in any form of Sherlock Holmes is not very fond. I'm not very fond of her. So they just pretty much stepped up my level of irritation, basically. And so Sherlock, he got shot by the guy, because the guy was in the brownstone, and Sherlock saw him through like the lampshade that's made out of metal, and so it reflected back to him, and Sherlock finds himself shot in the shoulder, and he's like running away from him. He ends up getting to, I think it's his room. It's either his room or the room he was having my Irene stay in, because it's the guest bedroom on the lower floor. And he finds himself not only trying to run away from the guy, later he basically has the shock of his life, honestly. As the guy gets shot, when he's about to shoot Sherlock, point blank dead, since he already got shot in the shoulder, he's like on the ground, because the guy and him, like, they had a tussle for a minute there. And then Sherlock, he's the person who shot him was, I have to go back because I did forget something. Him and Irene are gonna run away together, because he had to get her to a safe house after they got that petal that came. I'm talking about that guy who was working with Moriarty, who now was about to kill him, basically. He got her to a safe house that he inherited from a client from one of his first cases in New York. And so she told him, how about we run away together? But in the beginning of the episode, it was one of the flashbacks, the one after they had sex, and he was working on the little thing, drawing all over it. He was looking at her back, and he spotted like some of her birthmarks were in the shape of a constellation. God, gosh, what was the constellation? I can't remember. But it didn't really have much significance, but it was something that it triggered something in him when during the safe house portion. Sherlock, he got angry because one of the birthmarks was removed, and he's like, Moriarty wouldn't remove it. It'd have to be something you did personally for some reason. And he's like, you're working with him. You're working with Moriarty. And so, and she's like, you're insane. You're saying you work yourself up so much that anything that you think is the opposite won't be something you realize. And she basically leaves him because the reason why he saw it was she was getting dressed. She had a robe on and she took it off, and she was bare, her back was bare, and he spotted it because it's like right on her shoulder. And I was like, yeah. I was like, what the hell is he supposed to do? What is he gonna do now? And that's where we go back to that scene where he's shot, and the man who was about to kill him gets shot. And here comes the big revelation, guys. It's not really that shocking to me for some reason. Like, I was more disappointed than anything, honestly. So, Moriarty is Irene. And it doesn't end there. Of course it doesn't end there, because this episode was 90 minutes long, pretty much. So I need to talk about my disappointment for this, though, real quick. It really disappointed me, because when they first introduced Moriarty, you know, when he was talking to him on the phone, I think it was during the last episode, the landmark story, or which risk management, I think it was risk management. He was talking to him on the phone, and the voice, you know, that creepy, oh, that was such a creepy voice. So apparently, as we know, now we know, Moriarty is Irene, and Irene is obviously an alias, so it's Moriarty, I have a feeling. And so Sherlock starts asking, cause she's dressed like not as she was before. She looks more put together. And he's like, he was like, you're Moriarty. She's like, yeah. She's like, starts talking to him about all this stuff, basically how he kind of made it easy for her to want to seduce him, because when he was in London, he kept getting in the way of all these other plans she had, so she had to put herself into the picture and make it seem like he had something to lose, basically. And she didn't expect him to go as low as addiction and then end up having to be rehabilitated. And I was like, what do you expect, woman? You broke him. You broke him, pretty much. And he told her she broke him before. And so she's like, you should have left me. None of this would have happened if you would have left me. And basically she's like, while she's talking to him in this really demented way, and I'm just staring at her like, you're such a bitch. Because guys, I just can't do it, because it like bothers me so much, because I always have a problem with her character in general, not just this one, not just this Irene, in general. I always find a reason to hate her, and they gave me one of the biggest ones, and I don't know, I guess I'm a little spiteful for that. But so she leaves him there, bleeding on the floor, and Watson comes home. He's not laying on the floor, he's in the kitchen, and I think he's sitting down, and he's like, Watson, I need your help. And so she turns on the rule of doctor and surgeon and takes the bill out, despite the fact she says, you need to go to the hospital. Why don't you go to the hospital? Why didn't you call 911? He's like, we have things to discuss, Watson. And so she's like, she basically relays back what happened. There's an assassin on the third floor of our apartment. Our home. Your ex-girlfriend is Moriarty, and she faked your death. And now you have a bullet in your back, basically. He's like, yep. She's like, which one would you like to start with?
And basically, the first episode is basically finding a way to bring Moriarty down. And he had trouble. Like, he's like, well, I might as well find a way to start calling her Moriarty now, because that's who she is. And so, something that I've been waiting for that whole episode was for interaction between Moriarty and Watson as Moriarty. You know, because once it was revealed, I was like, it's gonna happen. So Watson gets this phone call from her brother about her mother, who apparently had a fall at the market. And he was somewhere else. He was like out of the country or something. He's like, will you please go see her and make sure she's okay? And she's like, yeah, I'll call you, because this is like when she's rebandaging up his wound again. And she basically, she's like, I'll meet you back, because they're doing the case. They're in a kidnapping case of this woman who's connected to the Moriarty. Well, she's not connected to it, but she was taken as a part of the plan in the Moriarty web. And so Sherlock basically, he has to go to this other place. I can't think of the name. It's in New York. I'm pretty sure it's still in New York. And it's basically, it deals with this man whose daughter has a in her house, basically is basically like a endangered species zoo. Like, she gets endangered species animals imported from places and takes care of them and whatnot. And so that was the next thing. And so he had to go and investigate why this woman was kidnapped or whatever, and why I'm gonna call her M, because I've been trying to say Moriarty. Why M wanted her. And so it was really just because he didn't believe it was just a random ransom or whatever. But her plane went off without a hitch. Like, before the plane went off without a hitch, Watson, remember when she had to go visit her mom, so-called, that's what the problem was? No, it was Moriarty, of course. She was standing out there all gussied up in her nice suit, and she has a bodyguard, and there's a car, and she tells her, get in the car. I was afraid this whole episode this was going to happen to Watson, but luckily there was nothing to worry about. But she did have to get in the car because there was a gunman behind her, and they were at this fancy restaurant, and she's talking to her about, she's like, I figured out him, but I don't understand his fascination with you, because he's very fascinated with you, Watson. And she basically tells her that she basically tells that Sherlock should end this game with her, because Watson brings up the fact, she's like, because she gets a she gets a text on the phone. She's like, business, and she has to get up, and she's about to leave, and she's like, you're afraid of him. She's like, no, I'm not scared of him, but I'm scared of what he's gonna make me do, because she feels that she doesn't want to hurt him, but because she loves him, of course she loves him, but she feels that she needs to win this game, and she doesn't see him winning in the slightest. But he does, guys, he really does. So the part of the plot that she has that ends up succeeding is the woman who she kidnapped, for whatever reason, is the daughter of the man who's importing these endangered species. And he imports these, God, I can't remember what they're called. I don't think it was a llama. They weren't llamas. They were like, it sounded like llama when Gregson said it, but it wasn't. They have them llamas in these little storage things. He was like, I want a llama, because him and Detective Bell and Watson were on a stakeout looking at this ship
which she was able to decode from a message that M had sent to, whose phone was it? Was it a phone? Yes, it was a phone. Phone of a dead man. One of the dead men who were assassins, or they worked for him. There's one cryptic one with a question mark for the recipient, not the recipient, the sender, and with a little weird code, the same one that Sebastian Moran had got, and luckily, our Sherlock knows how to decode that message, so he was able to decode it, and he was like sitting in one of the interrogation rooms, and he had like lots of stick notes everywhere, and he basically told her, he basically found out that it was from a shipping, a boat, basically a shipping boat or whatever, and they staked out that boat because it had docked, and they were waiting, but nothing had happened, and Sherlock didn't fall asleep, and then they find the man, and the man is actually someone well known, like in film world. He played someone from The Mummy. He's very familiar, and I was wondering what his part was going to be, because I talked it with someone before, because we had found out he was going to be in Elementary, and so he turned out to be a good guy in a way, but bad at the same way. Moriarty met him, and basically, since he had her daughter, his daughter, he basically told God, it's so confusing because Moriarty's a freaking girl. So she told him to kill these two very well-known people from Greece, and I think they're in New York. I'm pretty sure they are. Yeah, they were staying in New York, probably at one of the embassy places. And he killed him, and then their bodyguard, because Moriarty always has someone lurking in the shadows, her eyes and ears, and so that was that bodyguard who let him in, and then he shot him because the man asked him to shoot him. It's like, do it now, because he found his daughter was released back to the barn or the house where her and her husband lived, and that was another turning point for Sherlock, because he was rifling through a medicine cabinet and there was Vicodin in there, and I was like, you better not, I swear to God, if you do it, I will hate you. He didn't, luckily, but he had found a prescription of these meds that the woman had needed, but she hadn't taken 18. So obviously there was a lie there, because there was this ruse that she had went to Kenya, but she had not. She had been taken by Moriarty, or Moriarty's men, who ended up being dead by the guy who ended up shooting Sherlock. It's all come together now, guys. And then Sherlock, the man named him, then he ended up suicide. Then and so Sherlock found an end game, basically, after Watson. He found out that Watson, because he got mad because Watson went with Moriarty, and he's like, you should have never been, and he got mad. And then after that, him and Watson hadn't been in the same place in a while, because he got pissed at her again. And so sorry, I was looking. A lot of tweets just popped up on my phone from people. Because I tweeted the last line of this episode, which I'm getting close to, I promise. Oh, this is like the longest review I've ever done. There's so much going on, guys. It's so Sherlock. He went ahead and gosh, I forgot where I was at. God damn it. I know I talked about. I'm almost done with the episode, pretty much. So Sherlock, he came up with this end game, basically. She wanted him to lose, but he ended up winning. Oh, he won. So he ended up going home, and Detective Bell was there, and he was a little angry with him because he was like, you ditched one of his security intels, because one of the officers was security intels. They had security intel, both him and Watson. And a detective, Gregson had called Bill once Sherlock went up to take a shower, or seemed to take a shower. I knew he wasn't going to. I didn't know how, I just had a feeling. I was like,
there's no way in hell. Because in the preview of this whole episode, this finale, do you remember their Sherlock was on the floor in the bathroom? And here comes a scene where they make it seem as though he OD'd, where she drove him to OD. And she thinks she's won. Oh, she does. Because she visits him in the hospital after he wakes, and she's there. Her hair down, her looking normal. She strapped a guard, apparently, the guard that was on his door. And she's basically saying, we can still run away together. And will you forget all about this? And he's like, he basically tells her, he's like, she was able to figure you out. He's talking about Watson, like, my mascot. Because she called Watson about a mascot when she talked to her, and of course Watson relayed everything back to Sherlock. And so basically he was able to tell. She's like, we both made the same mistake. We fell in love. He said, however, I've still won. He's like, it was all a ploy, basically. He's like, I didn't really OD. I'm still as sober as I was when I met you again. And basically, they arrest her. They open the door. Watson's there, and I think there's a detective Bell, or is it Gregson? It's one of them. They're there, and they're looking, and there she is, and they take her in. And then my favorite part, the end of the episode was so sweet. Any Watson Holmes lovers love this part. So they're up on the roof, and we know up on the roof, Sherlock has a lot of bees. He has a little hive station. There's 2 of them, and the sweetest thing happens. So they're looking at the bees, and there's a magnifying glass looking at one part, and he's telling her about the bees. Because she comes up there, and she's telling him how everything. So Irene's basically gone, or Moriarty's basically gone, and how she won't be coming back or whatever, because she's been arrested, of course. She's like, you don't have a nemesis anymore. What will you do? Will you try to find a new one, or is this a long time appointment? Now her thinking of her being his sober companion, even though she's just his friend now, or his companion now. He just looks at her, and he's like, he starts talking about the bees, and then he mentions that he found there was the case where the bee sting was the death of the person, and he has one of the bees over in the box, and apparently it's mated, and it's never supposed to mate, but somehow it happened. So there's a little bee coming out of the little hole, and he's like, I'll have the ability to name it. And he named it, and it has Watson's name in there somewhere, because I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it had something Watson something, and I was like, oh. And then she goes, you named a bee after me, and she keeps saying it, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is so sweet. Oh, it was so sweet. I loved it so much. And he's like, I can come get you when all of them come out, because you know when a bee gets pregnant, and the first one comes out, there's several different. They just prego on everything. It's basically like on a drug. They just have a lot of babies on one go. And so she's like, no, I'll sit. I think she puts something down, and she sits on it, and they just stare. They stare at the bees together, and I was like, oh. That's sweet. And so, oh wow, this is the longest review I've ever done. I mean, seriously, this is probably the longest I've had talking for almost an hour. Good lord. Bless whoever watches this, honestly, because, I'm sorry I put you through this torture. But next time you see me, if it's for reviews, I doubt it. Not until next season. Or unless I do another Doctor Who one. Or I just start doing more vlogs. My hair will be a different color because I'm getting my hair dyed today, and that'll be awesome. Which I might vlog about it. I'm probably gonna see Star Trek today, maybe. If not today, it'll be in sometime this weekend or maybe Monday. We'll see. Anyway, I hope you guys like this. If you watched the whole damn thing, oh god. What are your thoughts about this whole episode? Honestly, I want to know. Like, did you like the freaking plot twist where Irene is a B&M? Let's talk about it. I so I'm gonna go. Bye.